To further disrespect India, Trump went out of his way to publicly declare that India's economy was dead and that the US does little business with India and should keep it that way. To call India's economy as dead is so Trumpian. I mean, let's not forget that Trump fired his labor secretary when he didn't approve of the failing job numbers in the US. Honestly, it seems like Trump just doesn't like honest statistics. The reality is that India's economy has been growing rapidly for many decades. In 2023, its GDP hit 3.55 trillion with an impressive 7.6% growth rate, making it the fastest growing large economy in the world. India has been able to sustain this massive growth for decades, and India's real GDP rose from about 266 billion in 1991 to roughly 3.7 trillion in 2023, a more than 13-fold increase. It's funny because in the West, we always hear that India is the next China. But once again, this is Trump simply ignoring facts and creating false narratives. Not only is he wrong about India's economy not growing, he's completely wrong in saying that the US does very little business with India. The United States and India trade hundreds of billions of dollars every year. In some sectors, America is almost completely dependent on India. Take pharmaceuticals, for example. India is a global powerhouse in the field, selling more than $10 billion worth of medicine to the US annually. Nearly 40% of all generic drugs Americans take come directly from India. Now imagine what happens if Trump follows through on his plan to slap a special tariff on medications that could eventually reach 250%. US drug prices are already insanely high. This move could send them skyrocketing, and much like the rest of Trump's tariff plan, come back to only hurt US citizens more. For years, the US government has been desperate to de-risk from China in manufacturing, but in the near future, and in most industries, that's nearly impossible. China's dominance is just too overwhelming. The only country with the population, scale, and even somewhat potential to even come close was India. But now, Trump's tariffs have torched that hope. Slapping a 50% duty on Indian goods destroys the last realistic shot at diversifying manufacturing away from China. Major American companies from consumer tech to textile manufacturers have poured billions into India. For example, Apple invested heavily in Indian facilities to produce iPhones to export to the US and the world. How can Washington seriously encourage Apple or any other business to divest away from China when the next best option is suddenly hit with a 50% tariff? Honestly, it makes zero sense. And it's not just about manufacturing. India produces millions of highly skilled graduates every year, most of whom major in critical STEM fields. One of India's biggest challenges is holding on to this talent, as so many of their brightest minds move abroad. And one of the largest destinations for the talent is, of course, the United States, where this talent becomes the backbone of the US tech industry. Just look at Silicon Valley, where Indian-born CEOs and innovators lead some of America's biggest companies like Alphabet, Microsoft, IBM, and Adobe, to name a few. Now combine these tariffs with a crackdown on foreign students, and you get a perfect recipe for making sure that those future AI pioneers, engineers, and scientists never set foot inside the United States. Instead, they will stay home and strengthen India's tech sector and probably work closer with China to weaken the US over the long term. In addition to these economic blows, potentially losing India as an ally is disastrous for the other major US policy of Chinese containment. And once again, this is where it gets really interesting, because the US has made it a major policy goal to encircle China through military bases and strategic partnerships with all of China's bordering countries. For many years, India had a long, intense relationship with China, from ongoing border disputes to a deep-rooted historic rivalry. That means the US didn't need to do much to keep India as either a strategic thorn in China's side or even a potential partner in any conflict between Washington and Beijing. But now, with these new tariffs and Modi's high-profile trip to Beijing, the US is effectively taking one of its most valuable chess pieces off its board indefinitely. But more importantly, Trump has now caused India to fully move closer to China, which is a major win for BRICS, another win for Russia, and another clear example of the multipolar world we now live in. In effect, Trump's decision to isolate India fails on all three fronts. It undermines efforts to divest manufacturing away from China, it damages the domestic US tech sector, and it fails US strategic goals. As we've said on this channel before, this is the kind of move that you would make if you were actively trying to destroy American influence. So the big question here is, why is Trump pursuing such a disastrous policy?